Hey everyone, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 19. This is part 2 of my talk with Chad Wanstreet from Blur Studio.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Hi everyone, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 19, which is a follow-up episode I'm doing with Chad Wanstreet from Blur Studio. Super talented guy. If you didn't check out part 1, check it out. It essentially is us rambling for a really long time, but these are the kind of conversations that I think are very valuable to be a fly on the wall and hear a lot about what we talk about, because we dive into a lot of great stuff. We know a lot of great people and have worked on a lot of really interesting projects, so there's a lot of insight I think both of us are able to bring. Now, I'm going to send some information soon about a talk I'm giving in Paris coming up, so there's lots of cool stuff to do with that, and a couple other really cool announcements I want to make shortly too. So that's it for now. Dive into this episode, check it out, make some notes. I think I've mentioned this before, but if you get a chance, check out my Facebook. It's facebook.com/Allan F. McKay, so ALLANFMCKAY. So that's F for Frank. And we could be friends and hang out. So that's just really vital, because I want to be posting some really cool announcements soon, and these are all going to be really valuable to you, so I want to make sure you don't miss it. That's it. Let's get into this episode, guys. For me, like I've had that conversation 100 times where people will say, like, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and it'll never get better. And like, my opinion is that the industry will get better, but it's not going to be until it literally gets to a point where the whole fucking thing collapses, and then that's finally where it can. And until then, it can't get better. And even now, like, I never thought in a million years Hollywood wouldn't be the number one studio in the world. In North America. Like, right. I used to live in Vancouver. When I lived in Vancouver, there was no film industry. It was number 3 best filming city in North America. So not the US, but North America. But it was all people would go out there and shoot. There were 4 feature film studios. So like, when I was out there, it was video games. That's all they had out there. Then, out of nowhere, literally a year later, it transformed into number 1, biggest studio city for feature films out there. And then LA, and then New York. Mm-hmm. And even then, you've got, New Orleans, you got Boston, all competing for a bit. Yeah, well, New York's number 2, or number 3 these days, but
I thought New York was number 1 now. Well, no, sorry, in the U.S.
Yeah. So it's just, it is one of those things. It's definitely changed a lot. London and Vancouver are definitely the heart of it now. And I've talked to people in India, and like, even they're surprisingly suffering because China. So it's, the whole face of it all is shifting drastically, and it will continue to. And whether people realize or not, they will chase incentives. Australia has actually been very big on incentives, like even 10 years, or longer than that, 20 years ago. They would offer up to 40% of the film commission for doing a film out there. So like The Matrix won, Star Wars, like most of the Star Wars films were all shot in Sydney. I don't know if most people know that, but like Rob Coleman, all those guys would go out there, they would shoot all of it on green screen at Fox Studios, and they'd go back. And I remember at one point, iRobot, Mad Max, which is about to come out finally 10 years later, but like 2004, or 2003 actually, is iRobot, that, Star Wars, were all being filmed at the same time. So they were going to set up a second Fox Studios in Sydney because they ran out of shooting room. It was just too much going on. iRobot ended up getting shot somewhere else, same director and everything, but shot somewhere else. And Mad Max got put on hold. Star Wars got shot, Matrix, and everything else got shot. But yeah, Australia was big on that. But the thing is, as soon as the incentives went away, Australia lost out, and like, it would happen every time. And that's exactly what's going to happen worldwide anywhere. Is just as soon as the incentives dry up, And that's why Vancouver at least is smart enough that they will encourage people to set roots.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like Baton Rouge, places like that, they don't. So as soon as it's done, you pack up your mobile shop, literally like a camper, and drive away. Vancouver, I think at least, like if you set up enough there, you're not going to shut down so easily. Whereas like ILM Vancouver was originally Pixar Vancouver, and yeah, it's like Sony, DD, everyone is, it's Atomic Fiction is now in Vancouver. Everyone who's smart is going to set up there because it is going to be, for the longest time, it's a 3-hour flight from LA. Like you got film crews ready to go, so it's viable to do it.
Well, and you can't blame them for chasing the cash. Like, we're just as bad with chasing these particular jobs, these particular movies. I want to be on Avatar 2. I want to be on J.J. Abrams' Star Wars. I want to be on, like, whatever. We get it in our head that these things are more important and that you're willing to compromise just so you can have the privilege of working on this
where
stuff. And
ILM kind of plays a big role. And not to downtalk them, they're great, but obviously it is a privilege to work for them in terms of that's always been the pricing plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying on any level that ILM isn't an awesome company, but
however, the pricing plan will accommodate that. Like,
but
if you go to
even as
supply
a
and
businessman, me personally, if I were running ILM and I knew like I have a mob of these Ewoks, basically, like chippa chippa chippa, we want to work on your movie, like, sweet man, set the Ewoks to work. Like, if like they could do something and like and produce, why not? You can't blame a company for doing that.
Here's a deep question, but like knowing everything you know now, and for you, I would probably more target it towards your more recent experience. But like, if you could go back and do it all over again, like what would be the key things you would do differently? I would not do differently, but like for me, I look at it like,
how far am I going back? I don't know. Like,
I would have married that. No, like for me, like I look at it like you already said it yourself, like how you realize how simple it is to actually do what you thought was unattainable, and
well, it's not that I never thought it was attainable. It's just
more you thought it was going to be bigger, longer.
Yeah, I think like when Veronica and I were like sitting down and talking about like,
here's my 10-year plan to get a Blur.
Yeah,
let's just say.
Well, if it was to get it Blur, like, and like, okay, well that took 5 years, like, and that was even with like
not trying,
basically. Like
it took 5 years for them to come to me.
Something like that.
It's like trying to seduce a woman by being like, I'm not going to go and ask her for a date. I'm just going to like do my thing and she'll come to me,
And I mean, it's not to say that like, it was like a perfect storm of things. Like Blur was in a situation where they needed a lot of different people, and like,
still was long before Halo, so it wasn't like you were part of the mass batch.
No, I was part of that. I mean, it was like pre-planning to that. It's not,
The way Keith explains it, it kind of happened pretty spontaneously, like literally overnight. Like the Halo team were assigned, like, you're going to do Halo Anniversary, and then like the day after, it's like, now Blur is going to do it, and you got 6 months to do it because that's how long the game has to develop it. It's like a very tight turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you that if I went back and looked at my emails now, knowing what I know, and like that it would be like, oh, this makes sense. Like, yes. Because of this job and where we were and slated in different things, like, they were putting pressure on at different times, and it's all tied.
But if you were, because for me, I find this fascinating, but like if you were to say, okay, like I know what I know now, and if I were starting out in my career and I wanted to go work at a top tier studio, whether it's Weta, like Sony, whoever it's going to be, how do I set my roots? How do I set my path to go to those studios? Cutting the fat, essentially, in terms of like, because initially you might be like, okay, I need to get my college degree, I need to go and find a mentor, I need to do all these things. Like, what do you think would be the valuable things that would? And I think the mentor thing actually might be a trigger there, but.
Well, I think like finding baddest ass small studio, whatever that is around you, and getting a job there is definitely like that's really important. I mean, I lucked out. I totally lucked out with Speed Shape. I mean, I wouldn't do it different. Like working with that group of people, like they were awesome. And Pluto, like I mean, I learned a ton with them as well.
So you're saying you do it all the same?
If it was like stay in this industry, I wouldn't change it. Like
but like let's say you want to go to Blur, like you're.
I am a
Okay, I mean, here's a perfect example. Like,
I'm totally not answering your question.
No, you aren't, you asshole. No, my perfect example, I actually agree 100% with you. Like, if I were to suggest to someone, and like I haven't thought out this question in terms of what my answer would be, but I do give this advice a lot. Like, if you want to fast track your career and you want to get up there, and I even had this conversation today with a friend of mine. She's in architecture, but like more to Christina about explaining, if you want to get a pay rise, you don't stay at the same company.
Nope.
Because they're going to see you for 5 years. They're still going to see you as a junior. It's like, you're doing well. Like, you're going to get promotion soon. You're going to get like an extra $1,000. But you reestablish yourself a few times, you can really step up substantially. So for me, like, if you want to hack your career to get it like a few years ahead right away, and again, I haven't figured out the full thing. I'm asking you because I haven't thought about it. But I do say that, like, I would recommend going to TV commercial house right away. Don't go to feature films where you're doing 3 years on a CG feature doing fuck all.
I mean, I think I pretty much made that clear. Like, don't do features.
Well, yeah, but like, I mean, I got offered, going off track, like, I got offered a very high position on Happy Feet, which won an Oscar and did really well for itself. I could have gone on there and been like a key player on that film back in 2003. Instead, I went to LA. And I remember the night of the Oscars in 2006. I was in LA. I was not far from here with Willie Hammis, who's like, at the time was one of these supervisors at Sony, working Beowulf and all these other movies. He was up for an Oscar for Monster House versus Happy Feet. I was up for an Oscar, not personally, but for Superman Returns. But we were up against Pirates of the Caribbean 2. So we were screwed because Davy Jones, like, we were fucking screwed. Like, it wasn't a question.
You can't compete against Davy Jones.
So, but the thing is that, like, I had a chance to look back and be like, did I make the right decision going to LA or going to work on like a feature film which did win an Oscar? And I'm like, no, I made the fucking right decision. I went to LA. I did, 100 fucking feature films. I exploited my career. I did all this shit. Never would have imagined, and that. I feel it comes down to, like, if you're willing to get out of your comfort zone and do something ambitious, which most people aren't.
But even that, like, that kind of goes back to some of my, like, point as far as our industry and stuff, like, that if I could win an Oscar, like, that's somehow, like, to do the visual effects on a movie that would win the Oscar, for them to, like, go up and take credit for it, not to even mention the studio in the first place.
Okay, right.
Like, I mean,
I was going to be a dick and say I don't know how many Oscars I've got, but you're like, saying to actually go out there personally and then
like, but fuck those guys. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I just don't care. I don't know. Like, I just don't give a shit. Like, I'd rather like be paid reasonably and get to drink like a kick-ass bottle of wine than.
I will say that what's the movie we're talking about? It's Life of Pi.
Oh yeah.
So the director,
the subtext to that conversation was Life of Pi.
well, a couple of things. Like I remember my buddy, who's the animation director for Weta. He came out. It's cool because Christina had just, I don't know why I've mentioned her so much here, but she had just came out from Canada to visit, and I took her out to meet up with my buddy Dave because he literally spent 6 months for Weta, flying around collecting all the awards for. The Oscars for VES, went to London, like worldwide, went around doing the whole thing for 6 months. Like, he is now like one of, if not the key player for Weta. Like, and I used to sit next to him. I love that because career-wise, like, there's so many things he's done that like have been substantial. The thing was, he didn't collect a single fucking award the whole time he's here because of Life of Pi. And like I remember it was at VES Awards, Life of Pi. Well, I didn't even know what the fuck it was at the time. I do now. I think back, I'm like, I had friends of mine telling me, like 5 years before that, how they were working Life of Pi at RNH, and it just didn't register in my head what it was. But yeah, like the thing is, I've got a personal friend who is a close family friend of, and I'm drawing a blank, the director.
I don't know his name.
I do. I'm just completely drawing a blank.
I know.
Anyway, but like close personal friends. So like he actually personally flew out here when all that stuff was going down to help with it all. But like what I was told about the whole thing was that basically, and this is word for word from the wife of the director. I can't goddamn remember this very second. It's from the tip of my tongue. But anyway, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. What is it? Ang Lee, fuck it. Because I was thinking of the director of. I was thinking of the director of Jason vs. Freddy, which is anyway. So
Jason vs. Freddy. That would have been awesome.
No, that's Ronnie Yu. Because God, I have some stories about Ronnie Yu.
That would have been a very different movie.
That was actually
probably would not have broke the bank for minimum years.
Ronnie Yu, I went to that was the first cast and crew premiere I ever went to in LA. Anyway, I've got some stories about that fucking guy. But so Ang Lee, the word for word from his wife basically is just he's not good in the crowd. And it sounds like such a piss poor excuse, but she has to sit front row in front of him and kind of coach him through his speeches typically. And it's an innocent thing, but like he basically is not one. Like he goes up there, he's fucking petrified of crowds, and for him to go up there and talk about like I want to thank all these people, like he is just struggling to get through every single word, and for him he just wants to get off stage. So like it's such a catastrophic thing because in the end it's just like he's sent ripples through the fucking world, and especially how the Oscars handled it. But it came down to the fact that he wasn't thinking straight. It wasn't like he went out there with complete confidence like I want to thank all these people. It was like I fucking am petrified and I just want to get off stage.
Well, I mean, anybody in that context where it's like you're on a timeline and doing this.
And as his wife said to my buddy, she basically said like, why on earth would you thank the water team from Thailand? It was in Thailand. Actually, I think it was Thailand or Taiwan, but it was, why would you be thanking the pool people or whatever, for this? I mean, obviously he's just fucking a mess when he goes up there, you know what I mean?
I'm sure, but I mean,
it was a colossal fuck up.
It was a colossal fuck up.
And then the Oscar stuff, like the Jaws theme, everything was just. I
mean, your movie isn't even possible without these people. It's just not even possible. Like, they are the most important group of people you have around you, and you thank all these other people that
the pool people,
their job redundancies are insane. So
yeah, actually, the only thing I was going to say about starting out, and this is in congruence with you, but I always say that like if you start at a TV commercial, a good TV commercial house, and you spend a good year, even just a year there, you will probably work on about 13, 14 commercials. And like whatever you have, and the real stuff, we'll save it for another day because I know we've got too much to cover. But like, I kind of feel like before you start at a studio, your personal work is just not going to cut it. Like typically, except in a few rare situations, typically your work is going to look like a student work, and then you work on a studio where you're collaborating with several other people who are fucking good at what they do. Together you make this polished, amazing piece of work, and that's going to stand out night and day. So you go and you work on 13, 14, 15 pieces of work in a year, like
with
you're
a
doing
small group of people.
Two weeks with 6 people or whatever per commercial. A year later you've got a new reel. You can already cut a new reel from scratch that's polished and then reestablish yourself. So if you do a year at one studio, build up a fucking cool reel, cut it, go somewhere else, then you're not the junior anymore. You can go somewhere else, reestablish yourself. I went from 5 years like jumping around a lot, doing a lot of different shit. Then I got about 17 years old, I got into commercials, cut a new reel. That reel got me into Blur. Didn't go to Blur obviously, but I went and I was a senior technical director. I had the experience, but at the same time, I was turning 19 by that point, was a senior technical director, which at the time was my lifelong goal. I didn't aim very high, obviously, but you can go from one to the other. And I think that if you want to hack your career and fast track through it, it's more about getting quantity in your reel. If you go to a feature film place, you're
going to work years on the exact same thing
and have nothing to show for it and no
Yep.
responsibility. But if you put yourself in a cutthroat environment where you are forced to adapt, and like I always say this, and that is that like my first 2 weeks I worked at a place called Ambience, which at the time was number 2 or number 1 best studio in Australia. Animal Logic, and they next to each other, 3 best studios in Australia next to each other, which was crazy enough. But like we turned out amazing work. My first 2 weeks in there, I felt like I had the 5 years I had been working in 3D. I feel like I had learned more in 2 weeks, just because. And this is why we talk about mentoring, stuff like that. I feel like just being around other people that motivates you. Then having people who just tell you shit off the cuff, like, oh yeah, when I did this, we did all this kind of stuff. Like your mind fucking expands.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's key, and there's nothing else like it. So those two, and that was a cool thing going back to Australia recently. I actually got to catch up with those guys, and one in particular, the guy I used to sit next to. I actually got to tell him, which was awesome. Was like, I talk about you a lot, and actually he got all teary, which was a little gay, but like, no, it was cool. I actually felt great to actually tell someone that, like, when I was starting out, 18, 17, like, I learned so much and it changed my life being, So, yeah, I do think that there's ways to hack your career and do all that, and that's what I was trying to get out of you, son of a bitch. But, yeah, I do think that there's key things that, definitely key. I'll start rattling these off. I always knew this was going to be one of those things, but I don't know, for you, like, networking, I mean, do you think that's important? Dumbest...
Yes, of course. I mean, yeah. I mean,
I'm leading into this because we've talked about LinkedIn and everything else. You've given me shit over many glasses of wine where I'm getting LinkedIn requests, which, mind you, I actually, on a side note...
We're going to look at... Those are all LinkedIn requests.
Those are all LinkedIn, but I fucked up. I accepted...
You get like one a week.
I went to accept one today, and I got tricked where it's like, do you wish to... add all your other LinkedIn, like, Gmail requests. I'm like, yes. Then it's like, do you wish to ask all your other people on your list? And I actually hit yes. I'm like, fuck. So I spammed, like,
everybody. Yeah.
I noticed, like, Neil Blevins, a few other guys were on there, and like, because there's like Pixar addresses. I'm like, wait a minute. No, it's too late. I'm like, shit. I just sent like 1,000 emails out asking for LinkedIn. But I mean, that's where I'm leading to. But I mean, networking is obviously key, and like, I'd rather.
But I think it's like, there's networking and there's LinkedIn and all that stuff, and it's kind of what we talked about as far as, Daryl and some of my other students and stuff. Personal networking is what I think is, like, most important. Like, people actually reaching out to you and, like, not directly being like, can I have a job right now? Like, can you tell me what it takes to get a job? Like, somebody who's going to take the time to, like, develop a relationship with you, build a relationship,
Agreed.
Is interested in what, like, you have to say, realizes that this takes time, and you cannot just Facebook friend request me and send me shit and you're real, and I'm going to, like, oh my god, like, I'm going to bring this to Monica, and you're going to get a job at Blur. That's not the way it works. Like, I think if you can take away anything from what we've been talking about, it's that we're a very tight-knit group, and that level of communication and personality and meshing, like, we hold that exceptionally, like, dear, and like that the Michigan clan that is kind of infected LA and whatever, like, we've done so because we are all friends, and we've made these connections over years. And I think that, people need to be patient. That was one of the great things with Daryl, is, like, he never just, like, came out and said, like, can I have a job? It was just like, hey, he'd check in and whatever.
Can I have a recommendation? It's a different story.
Yeah, it's like, he just cracked me up. Like, this guy's actually, like, playing the long game and realizes that this is not something that you just, like, get right out the gate. And just because we're LinkedIn, like, buddies doesn't mean I'm actually going to recommend you. I mean, I don't endorse. There's tons of shit, like, I don't do. I'm just, like, philosophically anti it. And it's great if you endorse me. I don't really care one way or the other, because it doesn't mean anything to me. Maybe it means something to somebody else, I don't know, but me personally, I don't give a shit.
I was having this conversation recently where I mentioned something, something I always say, but like when I tell people to apply for jobs, I don't, and this is Christina again 100 times, but like just coaching her and applying for work, I always say, like, you know, don't ask for stuff. As in, like, if I apply for a job, and again, my position is going to be different, but like if I email studios, if I'm in like a new city and I'm like, hey, I'm going to hit up a few studios, see what's going on, I never ever say like, hey, I'm looking for a job. I will tell them like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, I'm busy, but I'd love to talk to you. And it's more about, and again, I get, every day, I'm not exaggerating, I get maybe 3 people email me asking for a job, let alone recommendations, real reviews, everything else. And the thing is, if people ask you for stuff, there is like a kind of burden that comes with the email, whether or not you realize it or not. But like, if someone says, hey, you need to give me a job, let alone like the real bearing weight of like, if, you know, you need to give me a job, and I get these, and everyone I'm sure does, if you don't give me a job, my family's going to disown me and I will fail in life. Like, the bigger the weight, the more people, if they don't have the answer you want, the less they're going to want to reply, because it's a psychological thing, but they're just going to be like, I don't know how to reply, I'm just not going to reply.
Yeah.
And if you email someone and say like, here's my work, I'm not looking for anything right now, but I'd love to stay in touch, and if anything happens down the line, whatever, then you're going to be like, okay, cool, thanks, that's awesome, you know, thanks again. And you're not going to feel bad because you're not laying them down, not giving them the answer they want. And if later you come back and it's like, hey, even if you don't have a job, it's like, you know, do you have any updated work or whatever, like, there's less of a back and forth that needs to happen, other than like, if you have something cool, fire it out. But there's not this burden of like, you need to give me this result. And I've had that even recently where it's like, I don't want to mention stuff because I'm sure people are going to be like, wait, that was me, but I've had people say like, you know, if you don't give me a job, then like, you personally, then my family is going to disown me and I'm going to be a failure. And it's just like,
but that's the stuff where it's like, me personally, I wouldn't feel bad. Like, it's like, this is your problem.
I've nearly woken up my girlfriend like, I need a hug because of this weight that's been put on my shoulders right now.
I mean, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm a little bit more callous, but I don't want to work with anybody who I wouldn't want to be my friend. And I'm sorry, like, I'm not 5, and we're not like best friends one day, and like, this is my problem with like Facebook and LinkedIn and all of these things, and this like instant gratification, and you know, we've talked about this a little bit, and I think it's like a societal thing and whatever, but like that level of like wanting that gratification instantly, and personal relationships being like just kind of diluted basically. So I have no interest in working with people that I don't like, and it takes me a while to figure out like, do we like each other, and is there like that chemistry, and will we work together well? And if that's the case, then yeah, like I'm happy to recommend somebody that's got good work. I mean, I'm always happy to recommend somebody that's got good work, especially if it's somebody that's got good work and also is like a cool individual that you know, isn't just like trying to guilt trip me into like giving them a job. Or
there is someone who is trying to get a job at Blur who's actually fucking talented as shit. However, he basically, rather than applying for Blur, I think that he felt like they needed to contact him. And so he, and I'm not kidding, maybe 20 times has written on my Facebook wall, like, whenever I've posted anything about Blur, like, you need to get me in. And the thing is that like they've talked about him and it's come in conversation many times, but the fact is because like, you know, especially the fact that he's not willing to apply even though he could. He's just like, no, they need to kind of come to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was just it was more of a reassurance of the already grey shit that was going on, whereas like we're already unsure because there's certain people who are kind of like saying, you know, I've had issues or whatever, but this guy is like fucking one of the best guys I've seen. I really respect his work, but it just kind of shows
but
like
it's that level of
dude,
douchebaggery.
You need to kiss my ass.
And that's the problem is like if you're gonna work with somebody till 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, like you're there all the time with them. I'm sorry, like I don't want to be around an asshole who thinks like the sun and the moon fucking rises with them. Like I don't give a shit what you think you did. Like you better be like a fun person to be around and like somebody that can have a conversation and like I don't have to listen to you piss and moan. It's really important, your personality at that time of night.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you read?
No. In Aussie.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
I'm sharing notes, but
yeah,
I agree.
It's huge. It's more important. I mean, it's obviously don't have 2012 on your reel, and don't be an asshole.
What about job interviews? Like when you go to a job interview, like let me rephrase that. What would be advice you'd give? Because again, I'm asking this because not like, you know, give me experience of your job interviews. It's more about you can give advice to people about how to do a better job interview. Plus, you've got experience interviewing artists and trying to figure out what you want. So, what would be advice you would give to people when they go to a job interview? And again, I've got views on this, and they're...
I'm sure you have views on this.
Yeah.
Mine. From both sides. I mean, I think a lot of it's, you know, the realistic expectations of where you're at, and this is where it's like even the reel and cutting your reel comes into play. But lots of people like, and this is where it's like I think universities are doing an insane disservice to people. Mm-hmm. Like they graduate and they think like I'm gonna come and like I've done this great stuff and you're gonna hire me and you're gonna pay me X, and it's like, yeah, you know, we're only going to pay you X to, you know, half X, and you're gonna, you know, consider yourself lucky that we're giving you this job because our first, second, and third choice turned us down, and you're like not even our first pick.
You need to start out somewhere, and I've got views on that too. So
I mean, there's like having that, like, I think that people have disproportionate expectations of what they should be doing when they're coming out of school.
Agreed.
So there's that, and then I think even in general, just disproportionate, like what you were talking about as far as, you know, this individual, they need to, you know, get in contact with me or whatever. Like get fucking over yourself. I mean, and that's even when you go to interview. Personal, having the ability to like chit chat and have small talk and converse with individuals, that is just so fucking important.
I don't know whether people realize this, but like typically when you go for an interview, they've pretty much made up their mind, I think. Like ILM and a few bigger studios, like
they want to make sure your head's not going to fucking spin in circles and stuff like that.
I have a different view about the larger studios because they're a little bit different. Like ILM, for instance, the interview where your place is a little bit different because like they will actually interview everyone specifically for a project, like the CG Soup will, and they'll choose who he wants. But typically, and like I had an interview with Riot, and for instance, like, you know, they even said like they're like, hey, and I told them that too. I said like the reason I had multiple. Recently, I kind of was more thinking about long term, about maybe settling down, and you know, so I started interviewing a few people just to kind of think about more big picture stuff. And I told Riot that like, you know, they're the only studio I actually considered just because every chat I had, it was just like blah blah blah, and then with them, they're like, they just seem like cool fucking people, and they were telling me that like we're just calling literally just to see if you're not like fucking insane, and I'm like, well, sorry to disappoint, but I'm totally fucked up, and but the thing is, if you can vibe with people, then that's all that matters. And the thing is that like 99% of the time when you go for an interview, and again, this is in visual effects, not in the rest of the world, but you're going there, they've already made up their mind about hiring you. It's more about whether or not you're going to fit with the group, and it's more about any red flags picking up. And if you pass that, then you're all good to go. And I mean, I've had after ILM, like I had a job interview in 10 years, if not longer, and like a proper job interview, and then ILM, I had mine, but I was actually drunk the entire time because I fucked up the time schedule because I was actually out in Australia with an ILM employee, and we got so fucking drunk that I went to sleep about 2 hours before the interview, and then I got a call. I was staying at my uncle's place just for a couple of days, and he answered the phone, and he's just like, I don't know who this is. It's like a weird phone call, and I'm like, I got it. I ran out my boxes, and I'm like drunk as shit, and I'm on a conference call with the entire Last Airbender production crew, so all the head supervisors, and I literally am drunk trying to make sense, and I'm on the phone trying to wash, because I had like cotton mouth, and I'm trying to wash my mouth out while having an interview with them, and yeah, it was. And yeah, it was just funny.
I haven't had that interview experience. Normally I'm sober.
Only me.
My recommendation would be to have interviews sober.
Only me. That's all I can say. But I will say that I had an interview for a long time, aside from that over the phone. But after ILM, without even thinking, I kind of went for a job interview to work on Priest, and it was a bit uncomfortable just because I wasn't really prepared for it. I kind of left ILM, went downtown, hadn't really been around there in San Fran before, went for an interview, and I'm like not knowing what to expect or not having one before. And the thing is, like, the guys were all fucking cool, and like they asked me a lot of questions which I think I did pretty well to answer. Then after that, like, I think being casual and cool, like for me, I was just like, hey, I'm just curious, like around here, is there any good bars? And again, I've had this conversation. I've had like one of my friends, she's at 343, does Halo and Destiny and all that. Yep. She was asking me like, hey Allan, like, I hear employees like really check your social network, and like, should I take drinking and stuff? Like, should I delete all the photos off my Facebook because I'm afraid that they're going to go through it? Mm-hmm. And I told her like, look, I honestly don't think shit like that is a bad thing. It actually shows that you have a social side. If you if you show pictures of you at home depressed over you being out with friends having a great fucking time, that's not bad. Like, you doing drugs, shit like that, that's
you're sitting at home with
fuck
your cats, like with your 10 fucking cats, like nobody's interested in that. But and even like at Pluto, like we had, as Dave would call it, there was the no asshole rule. Like, we would not hire an asshole, and
problem.
As such, like, we would vet people really long. Like, my interview with Pluto was about 5 months long, and it involved like going out to dinners with them, going to parties, meeting with them multiple occasions. But like, these guys wanted to make sure that in a social situation that like you're not gonna fucking go stupid, and that you can talk in front of people, that you can talk in front of a client, that you don't suck, basically. And one way to figure that out pretty quickly is to get you drinking, and if you turn into like major league asshole, like
if you raid a donut shop and then get arrested by police, I don't know if you know that story, but
no,
someone at Blur.
I could guess that. Well, I mean, so I think like that whole thing, and not everybody has the liberty to vet on that level, and it was also the position that I came in for at Pluto was unique, and it was different, so it was more long term, but I think it demonstrates the point that being able to like hang out and
agreed
and talk and show that you have a social side. And even like for Pluto, we throw a ton of parties. a ton of parties. They love to throw big client parties, so that you can handle yourself in that situation, because that's also like a big thing. It's one thing for like your company to throw a party, but it's also another thing for your company throws a party and you are a key player at the company to not be fucked up pissing on the broom in the corner, like, you know, doing stupid shit at the thing. Like, you can
pissing
handle
in the kitchen into the shellfish.
Yeah.
Again, another employee.
Yeah. But like, that stuff's important. Like,
Yeah.
you don't. Those are not people you want around that like can't handle it and then are gonna just like go all crazy. So for companies that do stuff like that, it's important. And even Blur like those parties and their clients around, and yeah, it's important. You want to be social, but don't fucking be a crazy ass alcoholic. Like,
yeah, unless you bring the fun to the party. No,
yes, unless you're like the happiest drunk on the planet. Then in which case, like, yeah, you're great.
What was I gonna say? So when I went to interview in Priest, this was an interesting one because it was with Spy Post in San Francisco. Like, I was still at ILM, but I went there for an interview, and yeah, I mentioned it jokingly about boozing and all that kind of stuff. And like, I knew I had the job when the VFX supervisor was like, you know, oh yeah, like, you know, no problem, like there's this bar, and if you want, we can take you out for a drink sometime. And then they're like, if you want, we can take you out right now. And it's like, oh, okay, I got these guys. But the thing was, later on, like, I got kind of interested in this because, and again, even at ILM, at Blur, while I was there, the hiring process, because we looked at a lot of reels, and it was interesting to kind of go through that whole phase. But like, on Priest, there was one guy, and this is what I mention this because it's valuable experience for people to apply. But like, there's one guy who applied for a job, and he got it. Like, it's in the, you know, as far as they were concerned, like, okay, yeah, like, we want to hire him, interview him, seemed normal, good. And then problem was, and I was there for this, everyone simultaneously had an envelope appear on the desk. Like, he mailed out these envelopes. And this is where you're taking it too far, where doing your research, stuff like that. Let's say you're going for an interview, you research your employees. You don't tell them, let's say, that you're researching them, whatever. But the more information you know, the better. However, in this case, he researched them all after the interview. And then he sent them all personal letters. And again, I agree, when you go for an interview, you should send them a follow-up, because it's more about staying fresh in their heads. And it's also gratitude, all that kind of stuff. But be more staying fresh in their head, without like voluntarily doing too much. So he sent letters personally to all of them, which already I think was too much. But for instance, one of the guys, he worked on, and I actually got approached to work on this movie, Terror Zone, which was as if it was that and not Roadhouse, I forget the name. Grindhouse. So this was
Roadhouse is fucking epic. Don't.
This was a Tarantino and Rodriguez like mashup, and it was just like a 80s kind of like B-grade film mashup. So it was like a new Terror Zone and Grindhouse, whatever. So anyway, it was a 50-50 movie. Half was zombies, half was like this road warrior kind of thing. Anyway, so I got asked right after Blur, actually, in 2006 to go work on that movie. And I told him, like, I was too burned out. Like, I killed myself simultaneously in Halo and Bioshock. I just wanted a break, so I went back to Australia. And the thing is, one of the guys, like, there's a shot where, I think it's Tarantino or one of the actors in the movie gets his dick chopped off, and it was CG. And I think it becomes like a zombie dick or something, I don't know. But
it sounds like an excellent movie.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it all, but like I had friends see it for me, and basically this guy had read an article that one of the guys was, you know, a 3D artist in this thing, and he did the digital dick. Okay, so he wrote a letter to who now was the VFX supervisor. He wrote a personal letter to him, as well as to CG Super and everyone else, but a personal letter to him saying, like, you know, thank you for the interview, it was so great, and like, I was a really big fan of essentially the digital penis that you did for this movie, and this, and this. And I just remember I found all this out because I was in the room, and like I was pretty well into, like, I was friends with all the guys there, and like I just remember all of them being like, "Did you get a letter? Did you get a letter?" And they were like, "Yeah, I got a letter." And just this freaked out look in their face, and I'm just like, "Guys, like, what's going on?" And they told me, and it's just like, "Yeah, we were gonna hire this guy until he sent this letter, and like now we will never hire him." And that's the thing, is like, there are personal touches you can do that I think really help you, and then there's going too far that fucking will damage you, and you really need to be careful of that. You know what I mean?
Yep. Don't be psycho stalker.
All right, we're gonna really move along because we got to wrap this shit up. So, let's just keep them short. But I guess like I mean, and again, like, you're now, I think you're more self-conscious about this now, and more than anything about like building your brand and like building your rep and all that kind of stuff. Because I mean, you've got a solid rep in terms of your career and everything else, but like obviously, if there are artists who want to kind of really kind of step up and be like, okay, well, I want to like really help my career, and it really comes down to like building your name and everything else. I mean, I'm just curious whether there's anything you can give advice wise that might help them.
And
it is a bit of a random thing to say.
Me personally, I'm in the nascent stages of that, and I think definitely like starting just giving back to the community is big. Like helping other people to get to the same point and being open to other individuals.
Okay, and interview advice. I mean, we kind of covered this, but just to put the nail on the coffin, is there any interview advice, like magic thing you say? I mean, there is stuff we talked about to do with other things, with negotiations and shit like that, which I thought were brilliant, but again, it's more of a taboo thing that I'll leave alone. However,
I don't really want to talk about that.
No, that obviously, I'm just saying, like, that is like a bit of a taboo thing, and I'll leave that alone. But like, I'm just curious, like, is there any magic thing that you say? Like, I will say personally that every job interview I've ever had, and again, like, I don't know how people do job interviews, but I always felt like I came in as an equal. And again, like, rather than it being like the only job interview I think I've ever had where I felt intimidated and I was kind of new to it all, and this does deserve 15-second backstory, is that I had been working since 14 in 3D, and all my friends were still in high school. They all got jobs at McDonald's. I kind of envied them that they had these shitty jobs and they were studying. So I quit 3D, I quit video games in 97, and I got a job at KFC, and I enrolled in college for like 6 months, and I was like, fuck this shit, moved to the other side of the country and went to work on Dreamcast video games for Looney Tunes Space Race. So I'm just saying, as in, like, I basically for a while envied my friends and I wanted to get a shitty job, so I did. And like my interview at KFC, I was a cook at Kentucky Fried Chicken. I took a job there for 6 months just because I wanted a shitty job, and like I was actually intimidated there. I didn't really know what to say, but like typically when I go for a job interview, I treat them as an equal. I don't go in like, yes sir, how are you? I talk to them as if like I'm on the same plane as them, and it's not like it's a psychological thing. I just literally have always done that, but like I always felt like maybe that's like something that has benefited me, because you treat them like a human, they treat you like a human, not like kiss ass and all that kind of shit. Like,
well, and I mean, I think that what you're saying is basically like getting to the core of it. It's a business, and people need to realize like they're running a business and you're running a business, and do you mutually have the same interests, and your salary expectations and their salary expectations, are they in alignment? And what you're going to bring to the table and what they need to have delivered, are they in alignment? And aside from all the other shit, whatever studio they are and so on and so forth, none of that matters. Like, it doesn't. And getting past that, stepping beyond the, oh my fucking god, it's whatever studio it is, and I'm gonna pee myself. They called me, like, you as an individual have specific needs and requirements, and you need to make sure those are met. This company has specific needs and specific requirements, and you need to recognize that they are a business and they are doing business. And if you align at that moment, that's fantastic. But if you don't,
I've always thought so. Like if you treat it like a business, because it is, like, and that comes down to negotiation to pay everything else. Like people feel like they get mistreated. Like they're gonna undercharge because they're doing they're working for a studio or they're doing favors. At the end of the day, this is a business, and I hate to say it, but studios are not gonna do you a favor. If you go and like work for free for a few months because, and I've had that. I've seen studios where someone worked for free to the point where they're like, okay, now I'm going to get evicted if I don't get paid. Can you please give me money for my rent? And they're like, nope, you're fired. Goodbye. Yep. And all that kind of shit happens. Like, it is a business. They're going to make money off of your talent, so you should make money for them. I think that obviously down the line when you are a rock star, what you do, like yourself, you're going to then be able to, really go to the table saying like, yeah, I'm going to treat you like an equal. But I think in the end, like in the beginning, even you still should do that, but at least don't, going off of what you said, I would just add in, like, don't, just because you treat him like an equal doesn't mean, like, don't demand shit. When you're in the beginning, like, I would be humble and I would treat him like you're an adult, but honestly, just don't demand shit in the very beginning.
I think, though, it's like, it goes both ways, like, wrong, though. Like, you've got the camp where I'm willing to work for free, and then you have the other camp where, like, I want senior level pay, and you haven't done shit.
Yeah.
Like, get a good understanding of where the salaries actually are. Like, I spent a lot of time researching that early on. What's realistic? And I always, like, tried to evaluate myself in that context. Like, what do I know? What does this person know? What does somebody that gets hired for this position, have to do? And be realistic about, like, what your salary expectation should be, and don't give some stupid fucking number that, like, it's great you want it, but you're not worth it.
I know telling guys who charge 3 times what everyone else charges, but then they bitch and moan that no one is hiring and the industry's fucked. Right. But the thing is that they're unrealistic in what they're going out for.
Yeah, I mean, I've had numerous people where it's like, I want X, and I've told them, like, I'm sorry, like, you don't know this, you don't know this, you don't know this, you don't know this, and, like, you aren't worth what you think you are, and you really need to go check yourself and figure out. Yeah, check yourself before you wreck yourself. But it's really important to know where you are in the context, and there's tons of places to go out there and look for that research, and take it all with a grain of salt. Like, Glassdoor is. Yeah. People on both ends inflating and deflating to, like, be the martyr or to be like, I'm such hot shit. So
I look at that side just because, like, occasionally, because I just want to, the times where I actually feel like I can confirm that, I'm like, okay, yeah, those people are right, those people are wrong. Yeah. And for me, it's more of a, that's going out of proportion.
Well, and what I learned waiting tables, and I've always taken this, moving forward. When I was younger, we'd all work together, and at the end of the night, everybody would talk about what they made. And 9 times out of 10, the person, like, they're telling you it's a fucking lie. Like, they're telling you, I made $500 tonight. Well, they only made $250. Like, maybe they grossed $500, and then they tipped everybody out or whatever. And it's this, like, it's this mentality.
I've been in dances like that.
Yeah, they're going to. Yeah, right. I don't know that, but it's true. It's human nature, and be cognizant of that. That just because somebody's reporting this doesn't actually mean that that's necessarily what they made. And oftentimes, the person that is the most giving with the information is the biggest fucking liar.
Yeah. My dick is 12 inches.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, it's not. And it relates back to my cheater theory too. Those are all the same.
Cheetah?
Yeah, people concerned with cheating are the cheaters.
Yeah, believe me, I've had those conversations right before a breakup. Of like,
those two people are the same.
But there's a lot of one accusing someone of cheating, is typically the one cheating, and then it's like, yeah, I'm going back to my boyfriend. But I do agree with that, and I mean, yeah, we could talk for hours about that, but like, it is a pretty important subject, and it does get blown out of proportion. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I don't want to go too deep into it because you could go on forever about it, but doing your research is important, not underselling yourself, but not overselling yourself. And it is a magic line because you don't want to scare employers away when you go for a job by asking for too much, but at the same time, like, to be taken seriously, you need to, doing your due diligence is very key to that. So,
well, and also not being afraid, even if the dream job, quote unquote, comes along and they're not going to pay you what you want and what you need, don't fucking back down just to get that job. Like, you're an individual and you have these responsibilities, and you're not doing yourself any services by, like, I mean, unless, of course, you're not already working and you need to pay your bills and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to undersell yourself just to get that dream gig. Maybe your experience level isn't in sync with what they're needing at this point. And another year doing what you're doing, it's going to come along again. As long as you deal with them in a respectful manner and keep yourself at a I guess, what am I trying to say? Like, they think of you highly, basically, the entire time.
They respect you.
If they respect you, a position could come along, again, 6 months, a year, maybe even less, where your skill set might have grown and what they need is different and has changed. I think, like, being patient sometimes can definitely pay off.
There is, like, one, like, Blur staff employee that, like, he told me how, like, I did a talk at Autodesk University 2 years ago, and it was on, like, how to fast track your career and build a name for yourself, that sort of thing. And he was telling me, like, he'd watched that online, and he owes his job to me in terms of, like, it really helped his career because, and, like, one of the key things that out of many that he applied to get a job was the fact that, and I didn't mean it as in, like, blatantly lie, but I told him, like, I said that when you're writing your cover letter, whatever, when you're approaching a company, you want to paint a picture that if you say that you don't have a job, then people are going to look at you like, okay, well, why don't you have a job? Whereas, like, and again, I was having this discussion today about this with someone, like, with an architect, and if you have a job and you're going to work for someone else, then, obviously then it's more like, okay, well, you're in high demand, and, so that's cool. Well, we want to position you, when are you available, blah, blah, blah. And, like, it's a simple thing, but, like, so typically, and again, I go further with that, like, I still don't ask for a job. I would rather say in my letters, whatever, like, hey, I just wrapped on this thing, and I'm about to move on this thing. I'm not available right now, but I will be available soon. That's actually a big free advertising sentence you just said about all the shit you're doing. And on top of that, you're not actually asking for anything. So it means that when they're ready to approach you, you said soon, so it means that next week or two you could be available. So you're not cutting yourself out of a job, but you've given yourself a chance to say, I'm in high demand, I'm doing all these multiple things, I'm really busy, I've got all this shit going on. I mentioned to name drop 2 projects I'm doing, and I'm not even looking for work just yet. So I don't want anything from you, but if you do have something, I'd love to talk. Like, that there is like a magical sentence that will give you a lot of power. And it's not about saying, like, kiss my ass. It's more about you sending the message that, like, I'd love to chat to you without saying, like, please give me a job.
Yeah.
And so this guy in particular, he used that where he actually didn't have a job, but he said, I just finished this job and I'm doing this job right now, but I will be available soon. And it's just like a nice way to segue into, I'd like to transition into your company, rather than, like, I need a job, I'm a bum and don't have anything going. But that sort of thing, it's I don't say, like, go lie about what you're doing, but at the same time, it just means that if you have a job, then it's momentum. You've got motion and you're going to continue, rather than you're stuck and you need to find work. So just to rattle them off real quick, and we're almost done, but, like,
keep saying that.
I know,
rattle them off and then.
So and again, this is fascinating coming from what we talked about before we started the chat. But I like the fact that you're very talented when it comes to scene assembly, like doing lighting, rendering, but you also do a lot of effects. And like, for you, like, I already know the answer to this, but you do both, and where's your passion lie and why?
Effects.
Yeah.
Because this is more fun to me. I mean, I guess part of it is I like a challenge, and I think effects is more challenging.
It's definitely more problem solving. It's not like you just walk in like same old shit.
Yeah.
It's like, how the hell am I going to do it?
Yeah, every single fucking time. It's a totally different thing, as opposed to like building environments and all of that stuff. It becomes like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna do this thing, and I've done it before, and I just use the same technique to bang this thing out. And effects is kind of the bleeding edge. Like Brandon Riza and I were just talking about this the other day, and it's like it is constantly evolving. It's like the expectation is just like constantly evolving, and it's where lighting and everything was 10 years ago. That's where effects is right now, and it's just a moving target, and it's so much fun to be involved in that and not kind of have that. When
you're doing effects 10 years ago where you're using afterburn and particles, I mean, there's crazy shit you can do, but it's still like, at the end of the day, like, it's a pretty safe area you can work in. Now it's, there's
so many ways,
especially TP shit like that. But
even then, he and I were also talking about, like, I think there's also this tendency though in the industry to like overcomplicate stuff that doesn't need to be complicated, and that people need to learn to like box step before they break dance, and that that there's definitely a lot of that going on. Like, we see the fancy new tools, you see like the cool new Houdini thing, or you see like, oh, so and so did this with Krakatoa, and they mixed it with TP, and then they
try and build something cool and complex,
and they vector fucked it with like this, and it's cool, like it's super awesome. But like when you're at Blur, or you're at ILM, or you're at wherever, like, we have deadlines and we're trying to make money. We also like to do super awesome shit, but you have to be able to like do the box step and bang something out in a productive manner while not also trying to be like a mad fucking scientist, and chasing the new coolest thing that, like, well, I saw so and so do this, and I think it'd be really neat if I integrated this with that and then mixed this. It's like, we could just use P-Flow and Rayfire and like bang that shit out in an hour, as opposed to using all these
that's like the
convoluted things.
The number one thing, if I could give, not 3D in general, but in effects, if I could give like my number one thing I would ever fucking say, it would be to not overcomplicate everything what you do. And like
that's 3D in general, I think, though, too.
I always like I made this analogy a lot lately, but like Autodesk will contact me. They're like, hey, we want to fly you around to show off like the new Macs. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll build some shit. And for me, the demo stuff you build is like, now I'm building this fully procedural thing, like one particle generates this whole fucking thing. Everyone's going to be like, wow. Thing is, you're not going to do it in production. In production, you're going to fucking make a particle there, you're going to fucking hack it together. And it's not because, like, you just bullshit around in 3D. It's because you need specific control. And overcomplicating things is, you're going to lose control. And I've had, like, I'm not going to name names, but there's like at least like one particular person who's done pretty well name-wise to build his name up in effects. And I remember like working on 2012 actually. Damn it! But
I will never hire you.
I don't put 2012. I've never put that movie in my reel. But the thing is, I haven't cut a reel since 2007, except for recently. Which
you have a reel up on video.
It's funny because I'm doing
the training crash thing.
I'm doing Siege Society right now, and for once, and this is because Autodesk has always been really particular about like what software I use, and I've always been the poster boy for Max Effects, so I don't advertise other packages. But now I'm doing Houdini and Maya. I'm confident in Houdini for pyro effects. I'm got no problem there. I've super plenty of projects. I know who you're dealing to a degree. I'm not where you're at, but pyro effects, yeah.
I don't use pyro effects.
I do, and it's not bad. Like
I use flip and the rigid bodies, and then get the fuck out.
Pyro effects, I'm happy to do that shit. And like over Maya fluids any fucking day. Same thing in Maya. I've used Maya since 1.0, but I've never for the longest time discreet. Like I don't advertise that. Like they're particular about what I'll say, what I don't acknowledge. However, me saying like I'm now doing workshops and all that stuff, there has been a little bit of people saying, well, like 2 people, but it's just like can we see examples of what you've done? And I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I looked at my reel, I'm like, shit, I cut a new reel after 20 years and I only put 5 projects on it. It's like God of War, Priest, I don't even know what else. And so today I'm like, you know what, like I'll look at my old reel because like I'm bound to have plenty of shit in there. I looked at it, I'm like, holy fuck, this is from 2006. Like that's my reel before the one I cut last year. It's 2006, and like I'm like clicking through. I'm just like this shit is like fucking ancient. It's like almost 10 years ago. So it's just funny because like I've worked on so much shit, but I'm just like, holy crap! Like I really I've put 4 projects because for me I'm like I just these really fucking cutting edge things. Like fuck it. I've always intended to make a pyro reel, water reel, destructure reel. Anyway, but it's just funny.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I know. That's why I haven't done it. But anyway, who cares? We'll wrap it up. Did have a couple of questions. Actually, good one. Actually, in general, is just you work in scene assembly. Like, what's your typical process? And like, I want to know this because I think every job is going to be different, and I'm going to talk more specifically about where, let's say, where you take on a project. But like, what would be your typical process when you start a shot?
I mean, what do you mean as far as like?
This could be any way you want to take it, buddy. Honestly, I mean, like for some people, you're going to say, well, I look at a lot of reference. I try and build up a reference, or a style sheet, like a PDF. And
once you're in scene assembly, at that point, it's so far beyond that. Like, you already have client approval on the character, the environment.
So the environment will.
The environment's already built. Yeah, scene assembly, we don't do the environment. We do the environment prior to scene assembly.
So the environment typical. Okay, that's actually kind of interesting at Blur because I didn't know that. Well, I guess I did. I mean, but
yes, like
it's
when
the
you
CG
first
soup.
started,
CG soup is going to look dev the environment, right? Or
not necessarily. The lead can also look dev the environment, or the environment artist. It depends on the shot.
I hate to be a dick, but I always at Blur get like not CG soup and lead mixed up, but as in like I kind of feel like there is a bit of a cross blend in terms of roles, just because the CG soup is doing 3D.
No, but I mean, yes and no. So it depends. It depends the soup. It depends the job, and it depends the scope of the job. So like a job like Halo, the soups were not doing any 3D, and it was more like a traditional pipeline, and soups are doing art direction and scheduling.
I felt like it was trying to imitate a film pipeline, the whole show.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, and yeah, we can talk about that as far as like compositing pipeline. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. But yeah, I mean, the leads were basically doing look development, and then a couple other like key individuals were also doing look development as well. So there's that, but that all comes after the environments are built. So then look development happens. The supervisor signs off on it frequently, and the client will kind of see that look dev at some stage. They either saw the environment like rough look dev'd, or they saw the look dev.
But you were look deving environments on Halo.
I was. Yeah, I was also a lead. So
okay.
So then it goes into scene assembly, and in scene assembly, it's not to say that so one environment might have 19 shots in it, right?
Yeah.
So the look dev artist isn't compensating for all 19 shots. You try to hit like 3 the hero things, right? If there's close-up characters and there's a far away establishing, and then whatever it is that you've got, you're going to make sure that you lit for the establishing shot. You're going to make sure that you lit for this close-up thing. Now that's not to say that you don't need to add rim lighting and whatever. So then once it comes into scene assembly, those individuals are adding rim lighting and accent lighting and maybe tweaking stuff slightly. But the look, the quote-unquote look, is supposed to have been established at that point. And then it becomes compositing and putting together the render elements and getting everything. But even at look dev, we are compositing as well. There is a like master comp that you are supposedly building off of.
You're templating the look, for everyone else.
Yeah, you template it, but I mean.
And then they make it all their individual shots.
Yeah, we mostly just throw it all away and keep the idea behind it.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, as far as like scene assembly, once you get into that, then it's you come in, you merge all of the characters. Sometimes it's hundreds of characters. Get all of those in, bring in the environment, or most of the time you have the environment already. Hair, fur, cloth, all that stuff. Then step through the process of building all the render elements so that you have the appropriate passes and infusion, and going through setting up the render, getting your times down, optimizing, stuff like that.
Okay. This is probably a third last question. I'm just going to jump through like what I think are really valuable ones at this point. Like I said, I knew that with us we're going to like
go super long.
Yeah, I mean it's inevitable. I mean you're a wealth of information, and I mean it's inevitable. So one thing, and I'm more asking this because I think that it's something I want to ask because I'm fascinated with this, and especially you coming from more of a boutique studio, but while we're on the talk about methodology, what are tricks that you find to get shots approved? No, because I love this idea, and I will over-explain it, but like, we all have like, and this is actually leading to something else, but obviously when you're presenting stuff, like, I noticed like Brian Alvarez, like he actually will show his work and then he shows it on black, and I think it's because he's more paranoid about like the background just doesn't show his effects properly, so why not show them as a naked pass, like a raw pass, and see it in that context. But I mean, we all have and this is more goes back to you and I working in TV commercials. You will have those magic things that you do to get clients to approve stuff and like different things. I mean, even going as far as to create like really obvious problems with the shot, so that way, and that's I'd love to do that as a second thing, but yeah, I mean, a great trick is like you make an obvious issue, like a problem, so that way people are like, oh, yeah, like what the fuck's up with that? And you're like, okay, so if I fix that one thing, then the shot's approved. I'm like, yeah, just get rid of that fucking thing. So it's like, okay, no problem. But otherwise, they would be interrogating it more. But I mean, in terms of on the surface, like typically how you present a shot, like what you think are really effective ways to present a shot. I'll get into the ghetto thing in a second, but like, are there any tricks, hacks, or things that you think are really effective to, show stuff that might, I think the biggest hurdle is actually getting shit approved. And for me, and I think I actually missed this question, but it's like when you actually hire people, one of my questions, which we'll leave, but like, what's like the thing that you find is like missing, because like there's missing things in the reel and everything, but when you hire someone, it's like, okay, they're good, but like they're lacking this, and usually it's what comes with experience anyway. But it is like how to finish a shot is like the biggest thing.
It is how to finish a shot is the biggest thing.
Exactly. So moving on to that,
that's like, that's what separates the men from the boys.
Exactly. So so bypassing that, but what do you think really is the?
I think though, like my workflow and kind of like what I was talking about before, where I see lighting and compositing is kind of the same thing. I don't generally have like any tricks to it. Like I guess like I've been so close to the client for so long that I'm already anticipating what they're going to want. Like my trick is that my taste is, and like what I want is 100 times better than like what they're expecting, and I'm going to make it look what's passable to me, and they're gonna fucking approve it because
I'm Chad motherfucking Wanstreet, yo.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess like you learn to anticipate like what they're going to want, and I'm gonna make it better than what they wanted. Like I guess I've been in a number of situations where they were like, yeah, you know, this is what we're wanting and whatever. It's like, yeah, what you're wanting is gonna suck, and we're gonna make it better, and you're gonna be like so fucking happy that it's way fucking better.
Right.
And I don't know, it's rare where they come back and yeah, but we really wanted this. Like
we really wanted it to
suck. We really wanted it to suck. You show them better than what they ever had in their mind, and even like that was, you know, a friend of mine. We talked about like good employees and stuff like that. Like a great employee is somebody that you hand something off to, and they take it and they bring it back better than you ever thought it would be in the first place. Like those people, they're fucking gold, and they exist, and when you find them, like you hold on to them because they're awesome. And that, I don't know, I've always like carried that with me. Like when I go to get something approved, like I'm trying to anticipate what that person's wanting, and I make it better than what they wanted, and I'm not going to have an issue. It's just like, yeah, I'm trying to make it better, so hopefully it is, and we're done. I don't know. I mean, I certainly, there are the Easter eggs and all that shit. Yeah. Like, here you go, here's the thing that you're gonna, and there is some of that there. So to say, I've certainly had like fucktard clients where it was like, this guy is just going to like nitpick this one stupid thing because he doesn't know anything else,
or he needs to justify his position. Yeah, like, I need to give input because it's my job.
Yeah, we've had those, and I will bait them. Yeah, I totally will. Yeah, of course, but it's never in like a sacrifice of the image. It's always like I make sure like it looks good, and then I'm gonna bait you in this one area that I know you're just gonna want to pixel fuck, and we're gonna have like a good time with you. Yeah. Just because like we're not gonna. And it comes back to like, this is a business and we need to make money, and like I'm gonna get to the quickest way to have this thing approved, and have everybody happy.
I just remember like, you know, like back in the day, you know, we could have written a book on that sort of thing. Like, you know, even to the point where you will get like, if there's someone in the company that you really respect, like the head of 3D or whoever it's going to be, they would coincidentally walk by and be like, whoa, that was so amazing. And you're like, yeah. Like, you agree too? It's like, yeah. So then the client would be like, yeah, I love it. Or even telling them like, and yeah, now it's all coming back to me, but and we won't get into it, but even saying to the client like, hey, I did that thing you said, and you're right, it looks 10 times better. Yeah. And it's like completely the opposite of what they said. But then they're like, yeah, you're right. Like, I did that. Yeah. I'm awesome. You know? And it's just like a false pat on the back.
I mean, I honestly, like, I've always tried to have, like, I have respect for the client, and I hope that they will respect us in, like, my respect. And I know, like, yeah, there's always, as I said, there's bad clients, and you want to get rid of them. And I've done my best to, like, you know, get rid of them in the past. And, yeah, oftentimes there's been a couple I've been downright aggressive with because they're fucking like killing us. It's not about them, it's about their quality. Like the quality of work that they expect like is bad, and then they want to like fuck shit up as well. Those people I can't tolerate. I have zero tolerance for them. Like somebody where it's like they can respect good but they also want to like comment all day long, like all day long. I have no problem with that. That's the business. It's
an interesting subject, and like without getting into it all, it's just it's kind of interesting because you almost give an asshole tax to certain clients, and like I've I look at it now, and I've got like I've always had a really good rapport with all my clients. However, there has been one or two that, you know, like I worked at Metallica, which to me was their movie that they did, and like that was pretty stressful. And it's just because like initially when I was approached, it was a small job. Like it was like, we want to do this like whole like Metallica's new production logo. It's like all on fire and everything, and it actually looked fucking cool. Like I still have the original files, because to this day the original one like looked fucking amazing, and then suddenly it went this creative change, and then went from that to shit. But the thing is, there was these creative steps along the way that like they would give you complete feedback that would change everything, but then they would actually go to the client. So then you just finish that when the client has actually given their feedback, and you're like, wait a minute, that wasn't the client feedback, that was your feedback. And so, you know, and this was just every step of the way. And I've never done that in my life, but I actually wrote like, I wrote like an email to the producer, and I wrote an email to the entire team, kind of voicing how I was unhappy with how the whole project was being managed. I've never done that in my life, at least at the time. And but I did that twice on that production, where it was just like, look, and demanding more money, the whole thing, just because initially it's like, we want this, and then suddenly, and it wasn't, you know, you're going to make a loss sometimes on projects, and that's a given, and you make it up later, especially you keep the relationship. But when there's someone actively just pulling you down by misdirecting you, it's just going to kill you. So I guess like to read the question real quick and leave it there, but like I guess rather than like what you do to final shots, like I mean, for me it's more about maybe how you start shots, because we talked about that briefly and I didn't mention it, but for me I always make it a principle to try. I always have a race when I start a shot to get it to comp, as in like I'll compile a piece of shit, but the sooner I get in the comp, I can see it in context, and also I know my pipeline is going to work, as in I'm not going to look dev the shit out of something, and then when I finally have it approved and I go to actually do it in production, that's when I realize like nothing actually renders, caches, or works, and I got to reinvent the entire pipeline. And if I get it from like A to B to C all the way to comp,
as quick as possible,
and then revise from there, at least I get those broad strokes out, and we can see that my pile of shit is going to work, and then it's a matter of making it look good.
I mean, a lot of that is also like starting with solid reference. Like I just see that too often. Like I want it, you know, I had this idea, and like, well, what is it that you want it to look like? And I always have like in Nuke, like all my reference out and looking at it, and like this is kind of what I'm going for. But you gotta be fine, like going back and forth, having those like touchstones, and then get to comp as quick as you possibly can.
Yeah.
I generally
even on Equalizer
work that way.
Like our buddy Hammy, again, like you kicked ass on Equalizer, but I mean, I only bring up this example because it's a really good, fresh example. And we all make this common mistake, but like he would look dev like a piece of the puzzle, as in like big shot of like paint peeling off of a pipe and everything. And again, like I would have probably gone through the same thing, but you know, you looked at a piece and you get it to the point where you showed the client, they're like, that was great, now apply it to the whole shot. And you're like, okay, great. Then you do, and it's too much. Like you looked at a tiny little bit and you got that to work, but then you try and cash it out for an entire fucking shot, especially one that's like long perspective, and like your computer shits the wall and it cannot handle that. And like that's what I mean by you go through the whole pipeline. God of War, I hired someone who, again, is super talented, but he would show me wireframe examples of what, and tell me verbally what the shot was going to look like. And I'd tell him, I don't care what it looks like. Give me just like a play blast, like looks like crap. Where's the lockdown time and everything? Finally, he gives me, after 3 days of caching, a kind of not working version of it. You know, and I told him, like, look, at this point, even if I art directed it and I told you what I wanted, it wouldn't matter, because, you know, you changing the gravity, you changing this, and this is going to change the entire fucking shot. So we need to do that 10 steps behind. If you got all that locked down and then you go and do all the shit, and that's what I was going to say about the other guy in 2012, was just we wanted him to do one shot of some sparks, and 2 days later come back to that artist and say, hey, so where's the spark shot? And it's like, well, I built this really cool tool that now generates sparks, and it's fucking, you can do all this shit in TP, and it's all wired together, and you can do this crazy shit. And it's like, great, well, where's the shot? It's like, well, I haven't done that yet, but now that I've got this cool tool, it's like, we needed one shot, like 5 frames sparks. 2 days later, you have a tool, no shot. And even now, that tool is still gonna need revisions. Like, you don't overcomplicate shit. You do it in broad strokes, and you go as far as you need. And again, you could spend forever finessing something. I actually learned that on Blur, Warhammer 2004. Is like, you could spend forever finessing one cool fucking effect, and then realize in the context of the shot, it's behind a pillar. You know, your eye is going to be in the foreground. You know, and it all adds up. But let's wrap this up, because again, we will go on forever. But I guess one good question actually is like, what would be the tools that you couldn't live without in terms of production? Which I think is a really good thing, because you have a lot. I mean, I know rail curve, forest pack, girl effects. I mean, what would be the tools in any package? New plugins.
I guess like if I'm doing environments, then I want ZBrush, grow effects. I would forest pack or multi-scatter. I'm kind of indifferent to either one. I'd pick either one. Nuke, I fucking hate being without.
So, Nuke plugins though, do you use like Sapphire tools or anything?
No, I generally haven't. I guess I'm a little old school in that I build all that stuff up.
I never knew that anyone outside of Flame ever used, like, Sapphire tools is fucking amazing, but I never knew anyone outside of like Flame and Inferno even used Sapphire tools until recently, because
all those things like chromatic aberration, like that's all depth based in the first place. Like I built my own tool to do that, because I don't like the just like throw chromatic aberration on your image universally. A lot of that stuff is like, it's not applying it quite correctly, and they're cool, but it's just not the way that we've worked in the past. Not to say that we don't use them now, but yeah, if I'm doing effects, then I mean I can't. All of the ThinkBox tools basically.
Yeah, if you're using Max,
Krakatoa Frost, like I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I'm not rendering Krakatoa particles,
that's what I was just about to ask.
Without the PRT loader,
the caching,
Magma, the caching, all that shit. Like,
that's what I was gonna ask actually. Like, I mean, Krakatoa, like, I think is fucking amazing. And again, I was giving this talk yesterday because I was talking about monetizing on plugins, and I was around Krakatoa from the very birth of, like, it was an early Max script. It was a point renderer. It wasn't built for volumetrics. It evolved, eventually became commercial. But, it was a simple Max script that, it wasn't Bobo, I forget who built it, but Chris Batty or something. But anyway, so it's just funny seeing that whole progress. And do you... Yeah, I was just curious, like, so do you use Krakatoa much in terms of a renderer these days? Because it is amazing, but sometimes, like, for me, I don't have fucking time to do a Krakatoa pass and, like, a fume or whatever it's going to be, depending on what it is. But
yeah, depending on what it is, like, I have and do, but, yeah, I mean, a lot of times I'm trying to get away with something else.
Whereas the caching is lightning fast.
Yeah, it's for me become more of, like, a management tool and a way to get data that I want and manage that data in an intelligent way.
What about
building shaders, all that stuff inside of Max with V-Ray and how I use Frost with Krakatoa, all of that stuff.
What about MagmaFlow?
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of comes with it. MagmaFlow, I couldn't fucking live without. Like, I mean,
would you ever use it outside of Krakatoa rendering though?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, if I'm...
What for?
For shaders on all, like, every single fluid I ever render has, like, velocity-based and viscosity-based vertex colors on them that I'm also then coloring the shader and like the refraction, the reflection, the diffuse color. I kind of color all of those based on the velocity channel of the particles.
So even the refraction, you would use the velocity channel on the refraction?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I'll bring the refraction down a little bit because like when it gets foamy, it's just to like simulate it not being as transparent. So I'll make the diffuse a little bit more white,
sure,
and then bring the refraction down, make it not as reflective, stuff like that. It's all to like simulate that fast moving foam, and then it also depends liquid. Like if you were doing Coke or something like that, like as Coke like gets thin and faster, it actually becomes more transparent as opposed to you're seeing like the original color. So I'll use that vertex color to like make it more transparent, make it more clear, and then when it's not moving so much, it's more that color, that amber or whatever the fuck that is. That's Coke. Right. So I use it for that a whole lot. I've used it to make snow inside my environments. I've used it to make moss inside my environments. Magma flow with frost using the surface PRTs. I use it all the fucking time.
Any other tools you recommend?
God.
Folder Git.
Oh yeah, that one's good. Like the other little ones, I don't know. I don't really customize my Macs all that much. I just don't customize that stuff.
I'm starting to have this realization about my life, and this is like a very deep thing, but as in like I'm starting to realize that everything in my life I feel like is temporary. As in, no matter where I go, like even travel, live, like my life, relationships, everything, I'm having a nervous breakdown in terms of like I honestly, I'm starting to realize like my philosophy on everything is like, well, enjoy it while it lasts because it'll end, and you'll need to move on. And that I kind of wonder whether it's all caused from Max, but like I never customize shit because I'm like, you're gonna end this job soon, you're gonna be at another studio, so why bother doing that? And
I mean, you can take that stuff with you, I suppose, but it's just like I've just never really seen huge speed improvements, and I've spent the time to do it, and it was just like
you adapt to like whatever new freelance place you're working on. So second last question, as in like real second last question, but like Siege Society, you're doing workshops. Well, you've been doing one so far, but like how's that been going? You've just completed it, I'm assuming, because I just completed mine.
On my last week, yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep, we're completing it.
That's right, you're a week after me, because I started mine the week that I wrapped the Blur.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of guest artists coming in next week to critique their final projects, and it should be fun.
Cool. And how do you find it so far? Like the student quality, everything else that's been coming out of it?
I mean, I think that there are a number of them that are awesome. Like, they're very impressive. And it goes from very impressive to quickly people that just don't participate. Yeah. And the people that aren't participating just aren't getting the same level of content and quality that the people that participate are.
Yeah, and that's on them to kick their own butts,
Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate too because they lose out on like custom content that I built and build for.
It sounds like you've been going above and beyond.
Participate. I try.
That's cool. That's really good. And I don't know. What was your experience with that? You find it pretty positive all in all to teach and do all that?
Yeah, I like teaching. I think I mean I've always. There's a reason I got out of the university circuit, and it wasn't because I don't like teaching. It's more I don't like teaching people that aren't interested and aren't engaged in the first place.
A really generalized curriculum that won't benefit anyone in the long term.
Yeah, I have serious problems with that. But I like teaching small groups of highly engaged and people really interested in developing something. I definitely
cool.
Have an interest in that.
And I guess final question I'll leave it at, but like I don't know, I'm just curious, like what are your long-term goals for down the line, which is kind of personal and very generalized, but I scribbled it down at the last second, but no, honestly, like I've
been mountain biking a lot lately, and my long-term goal would be not to break any bones.
You know what? The more I think about it, because this is actually such a bullshit thing, it's just more like I'm like, I don't really have a way to wrap this up, and I'm like, that'd be a good question. But I'm like, the more I think about it, is a good question, because I know a lot of people. I'm like, I'll talk to them, and I've got friends who, one of them's like a director. He's the main director at Digital Domain, and he's one of the sources of why they're still around. And I remember working with him 10, 15 years ago, and he would tell me, and I actually reminded him of this recently, but like, he would tell me that, his ultimate goal, he wants to direct. And I told him that recently, like, you realize that you told me this 15 years ago that you wanted to direct for a living, you want to be a director, and you're directing a Digital Domain, you're one of the key dudes, like, you're fucking rocking it. Like, I just want to, say that's awesome. And we all have, like, those ultimate goals that we want. And however, when I say to you, like, what are your long-term goals, I'm pretty sure all of us us older people are gonna probably say, we've done our time, and to try and get some stability, considering how insanely crazy and topsy-turvy the industry is right now, that like stability, and you can't kill yourself forever. And like I wrote that article recently, the unattainable goal article, which to me was a pretty personal thing to do, but I had a friend of mine at DreamWorks, and he emailed me, and he's just like, you get a lot of people read your stuff, very aware of you. You should use this for good and tell them really how it is, which is like, you should tell them how, they need an exit plan, and how it's all fucked. And I disagree, but it was just like, wow, like for him to actually say, I was just like, man, like this, he's not a bitter guy, but it's just like, that's a bit of a morbid perspective on it. However, you can't do the crazy hours that we all do. Yeah. And we do it for a passion because we love what we do. However, especially when you have family, and especially when everything else, you need balance. And yeah, I guess I'm answering my own question, but it's just,
I think though at this point, like, I'm in a new relationship, and we're like figuring out where, I can't say what like my long-term goal is. I mean, at one point my long-term goal was to, like, I can get to here, and that's not long-term. That's
you're right.
It's already there.
You're right. I'm sorry. I guess I'm going my own tangent. I'm not trying to project that onto you, because you're right. Like for you, you've got your family, and that's obviously your main priority. Then Blur, which is totally a family-oriented environment. So it's not me saying because you're right. I guess I'm looking at more at the global situation, not rather than individual view.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and it's my mindset on that.
And again, like with you specifically, I mean, Blur, especially right now, more than ever, is going through massive growth spurts. As in, like, finally, I think that Tim and all the talented guys there, the hard work that they've put in, and the persistence they've put in is finally paying off, like Deadpool and everything else. So, again, like, for you, it's a great time to be a part of it, because you're coming in right at a chance where I think that they're going to shape in 100 different ways into many different things. So,
I mean, to me, it's hard to know. I'm trying to be as fluid as I possibly can at this point, and like not make something or expect something of it that it isn't, and then see what happens.
Oh, you've been kicking ass so far, so I mean, hopefully there's plenty more of that, but this has been awesome and long, but thanks again, man. That's been great. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, guys, hopefully you got a lot from that. Obviously, this is a very long episode, easily the longest I've ever done. Unfortunately, I couldn't really edit it down just because we talked about so much stuff that it was one of those, you got to be a fly on the wall and listen to it all. But again, I'm sure you got a lot of really cool stuff from that. Chad and I, obviously have a lot of experience. The two of us getting together, I think has brought a lot of great information to the table. Now, that being said, I am going to leave it here for now. I've got a couple more really cool episodes. The next episode I'm putting out is actually going to be about hacking your sleep, so how to get better quality sleep. And I know for a lot of us who work crazy hours, we don't get enough sleep, and that has a really negative weigh-in on ourselves. Now, my theory is if you cannot get enough sleep, then at least the sleep that you get can be very high quality. So if you're sleeping 4 hours a day, but it's really good, very heavy REM sleep, then that's at least going to count for something. I've actually got a lot of friends who've experimented with polyphasic sleeping and a lot of other ways to sleep, and it's kind of ridiculous actually how much I've been involved in trying out different things to get different ways to sleep, to get more time in my day, just because I work so many hours. And I know a lot of you are probably the same way too. So that's going to be a really fun and interesting episode, a lot shorter than these ones, but hopefully is going to be something that a lot of you guys are going to jump into and try out too. Just like those ice baths that I mentioned a few weeks ago, the amount of hate mail I've gotten from people being like, damn you, Allan, I tried it and it was horrible. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. It was hilarious. So I'm really kind of intrigued to see who wants to try out a lot of this stuff too, and anything else you guys can bring to the table. That's it for now. Like I said, check out my Facebook, Allan F. McKay on Facebook, or just search for me. That's it for now, guys. Have a wonderful week and a productive one.